Damien approached the bar, slowly and hesitantly. He saw Zarth and Ben inside, but yet had no sight of Roger. As he approached the bar stool, which was next to Zarth and Ben, he began to ponder what could have happened to Roger. Back on the ice planet, he saw something very regrettable happen to Roger. But all he knew was that Roger lived. Damien sat there, pondering while Zarth and Ben began to drink their ales and have a good time. A sudden flash came over Damien's mind. Something that made him remember what happened to Roger on that ice planet. Something horrific. Zarth quickly noticed and asked him, "Are you okay?" Damien replied with, "Yeah, I'm fine, just a little flashback." Ben slid him a beer and told him to relax, said it would calm his nerves. After about 15 or so beers, Damien decided to leave and departed with his good friends. When he returned back to the motel in which he was staying at, he quickly fell into a vast sleep in which opened his mind to very hallucinogenic type things. He saw Roger standing there, yelling at him to fall back, his phaser equipped, firing at these aliens coming from the top of the cave. Damien turned to run, but just as he was about to leave the cave, he witnessed Roger being impaled by one of the pinchers of one of those creatures. Damien awoke screaming and sat for a long while, pondering his thoughts once again. It was about 3 a.m. now. Both the moons had been well over the horizon of the planet. The outside temperature was about 320 degrees. Damien sat there looking at his power armor in the corner of the room, when suddenly he heard a loud bang at the door. "You in there?" Zarth yelled. "We need to get out of here and go to the, dark planet." Damien jolted upwards and said, "Well, I guess if you're ready." Not really ready. It's kind of early, but, if you want to. I don't know if the ship's really all gassed up, and I don't know." "Well, don't be such a pansy. Let's do this." Sooner or later, Damien got on his power suit, and he ventured off with Ben to a ship. The ship had been comprised of loosely fitted cannons and some plasma gear. Not that expensive, but not that cheap. Still not the best. The dark warp drive was almost fired up when another bang was heard at the door. Damien walked to the door and froze in utter fear. It was Roger, standing there, changed. His face had wires running underneath it, pulsating with life from some blue, faint glowing light in the middle of his chest. He stood in utter shock. How could anyone have survived that? How is he alive? What is this? Roger replied in a robotic voice, "Are you going to let me in?" Damien quickly unlocked the latch, securing the door. Roger stepped in with loud, thundering steps and looked him in the eyes and replied with, "It's nice to be back." Damien, still frozen in fear, called for Zarth and Ben. Zarth and Ben came running down as if someone had been murdered on the ship, and they both looked on in fear. Zarth just stood there, staring, while Ben had tears slowly running down his face. "We figured you've been dead. That's what we thought, Ben said in a surprised voice. Roger replied with, "Well, you thought wrong." Damien quickly spoke up and got them convinced that they should just leave and take off to the Dark Planet. Zarth replied with, "It's about time we go find those untold treasures." Damien quickly agreed. They fired up the dark drive and took off. They finally saw the Dark Planet swirling with dark atmospheric rings that seemed to be invisible but at the same time not. As they approached the planet, the systems began to fail. One by one they fell. The ship began to break orbit and fall down to the planet. In a panic, they tried to stop it, but quickly realized they couldn't and accepted their fate. But then something happened. The ship began to slow down and perfectly landed on an opening. There was nothing that helped them down. Nothing at all. They were all so confused by what had just happened that they didn't even realize that they were on a landing bay. The landing bay had been kicked into automatic, directing their ship down to safety, for the AI was programmed to do so. They all strapped on their power suits, all except Roger. He convinced them that he had automatic breathing units in his lungs, and he no longer needed a power suit anymore after what had happened in the ice cave. Damien, Zarth, Ben, and Roger all stepped out onto the planet, their suits cracking from the cold, their visors making frost rings around their vision. "Well, I don't know where we are, but if I could say anything about it, it's pretty damn cold." Damien was aggravated by Zarth's response, but carried on with what he was doing. They moved on towards an opening in some kind of wall carved out of what looked to be deep, dark obsidian. Zarth stepped in first, then Ben and Roger. Damien looked at the strange carvings above the door. It was as if it was some long-forgotten language, but he just felt a sense of unease, like some kind of dark aurora flowing out of the cave system that lay before him. But Damien followed after. As they were descending, they heard strange creaks and sounds, saw a few skeletons of past travelers with old exosuits and power suits with no power supply in them anymore, and whatever had been left in them had been returned to ash. When they finally reached the end of the cave, there was a door that had stranger markings on it. But there were many, many old exosuits, first gens to third gens, stacked around the door. Suddenly a bright light appeared in front of them, and a voice spoke. "If you wish to gain entry to this cave, you must prove your strength by fending for your own." And with the sudden light, they were all in different locations, as if they'd just been teleported, but teleportation was something fabled of, something long forgotten, something of a taboo. Damien stood in a dark room with one solitary candle lighting everything, which he could not comprehend. Candles hadn't been around for eons. Zarth stood in a room full of weaponry, with a single plasma emitter in the center of the room, illuminating everything. He smiled. "Well, it looks like it's my lucky day." Ben stood in a room, solitary. One single light swung from the top, revealing faces of the many deceased. half decayed. His mind began to stagger and fall, began to go into a panic, and his heart began to beat rapidly. Ben began to panic. The exosuit noticed this panic and tried to stabilize his heartbeat, tried to stabilize Ben completely. But the suit overcalculated it and put Ben to sleep. Ben dreamt of horrific creatures chasing at him and gnawing at his legs as he ran, but yet he could still run, even though they had gotten down to the dry bone. He was screaming and screaming in agony, and he finally awoke to only find out that his legs had been gnawed away. Whatever was in the room with him was slowly stalking him, torturing him. The suit once again noticed this and began to use Medigel to try and heal the wounds. It soothed the pain, but did not erase the shock in his system. The adrenaline was coursing through his body. He began to drag himself to the solitary light, in which a grotesque face emerged from the deep darkness around the room. The light would sway back and forth on this creature's face. A sudden jolt. Ben was dead. The creature had lashed out at him and sliced his throat. Ben lay in a puddle of blood building inside of his suit. Roger stood at the front gate of the cave, unaffected by the teleportation process, but he could hear the cries of the mental trauma going on around him. Damien stood there, in pain and agony, because some creature of fire came and attacked him from the candle. Zarth stood there, riddled to pieces, holes all over him, because some unseen invisible force blew him away with every single weapon in the room. Zarth could feel his mind slipping away. His bleeding thoughts, the memories he had growing up on a colony, raised in the back streets of some god-forsaken place. A tear rolled down his scarred face, wishing that he could have changed his ways before it was too late, before he arrived at this god-forsaken planet. He saw his mother's face, crying because they couldn't afford anything. He remembered his father's funeral. He remembered seeing his daughter slaughtered before him, not being able to do anything because he was too weak. That's what had made him the man he was today. But he quickly regretted it, and soon enough, as quickly as those memories came back, they faded away, his body slowly returning to ash in which it should have been long ago. Damien lay crawling towards the exit of his trial, crying in pain and agony from the severe third-degree burns all over his body. A bright yellow light shined over him and said, "You have passed your test. Now advance onward, to which your friend is awaiting you." Damien howled in agony and drug himself to the entrance, in which Roger was standing with a very concerned look on his face. Roger picked him up and heaved him over his shoulder and began to walk through the entrance, which now lay open to them. As they step in, they see something slithering in the darkness that coated it like a thick blanket. Not one person had ever spoken of the creature, but long ago they heard a tale of such a creature being on Earth in a deep cave, surrounded by some dark mass. The creature turned and looked at them with all six of its eyes, as if it was observing them, and it spoke. "I see. A human being. It's been so long since one of you have visited me. But as I can see, the other one isn't such a human, but more of an electronic being." Damien laid in fear on Roger's shoulder and said, Please, I just want to leave now. I don't want to be here anymore. Please, just let us go. Please. The creature replied with a sarcastic response. You want to leave? Then why did you come here in the first place? Were you seeking the treasure? Or were you seeking the death of your friends? There's no escape for you here, boy. Only your own death. Roger stood in silence, accepting the fate that had come upon them. Roger spoke and said, I knew this would come eventually. I knew this planet was like this. I brought you all here knowing that. The reason is because you left me back on that planet. The only person that came for me was this thing. My friends nowhere to be found. My friends, which I assumed were true, had forsaken me. I was alone in this deep, dark, cold abyss, but this creature came and helped me, healed me, patched me up, made me stronger, faster, better. I'm sorry to do this to you, Damien, because you looked surprised to see me alive. You were the only one that actually stopped and looked back when the others ran onward. But alas, it wasn't enough. So for this is your punishment. Damien replied in a painful tone. You know, I waited so long for you to come back. I didn't know what happened to you. I didn't know that you were torn. I wanted to go back for you, but they wouldn't let me. They held me back. Hell, they had to chain me near the reactor. I couldn't do anything, Roger, and I'm sorry I didn't come back to you, but when we got back to the fire planet, all I could think of was the fact that we had left you and seeing the expression on your face. It haunted my dreams, it haunted my memories. But they tried to drown me out with booze and women and objects, but it didn't work. I'm so sorry, Roger. The creature interrupted Damien, saying, Well, isn't that just a shame? Look at this boy trying to proclaim himself as a true friend. He didn't do what I did for you, now did he? I protected you from those creatures. Kill your friend, Roger, and end this. Roger had a grim expression on his face, and realized what he had to do. He set Damien up against a dark obsidian rock with strange markings all over it. Damien looked around frantically, trying to find an escape, and Roger pulled out some kind of old, rustic weapon, held it high above his head, and swung down with a loud thwack. Brain matter went everywhere. The eye of his friend slowly rolled out into the only spot of light. His pupils dilated, and Roger stared in pain. Although he had no heart anymore, he still felt the ghost pain of what used to be there, knowing he just took his only friend's life, the only one that looked back. And then darkness flowed forth, consuming his friend's deceased corpse. The creature laughed, and then quickly faded to nothingness, leaving Roger alone in the cave. And a small shine glared in front of him, and he looked to his left and saw the treasure. But he broke down and fell to his knees, crying. How could I have killed him? He was the only one that ever looked back. He was the only one that still wanted me there. I've been deceived. I killed my only friend. What is this worth? With that, the treasure quickly faded away, the door sealed behind him, and he realized he now had become the creature that dwelled inside the cave, waiting for the same opportunity that that other being was given, to wait for the next victims to come along. The end. Well, guys, that was a short story by me that I just kind of came up with as I spoke. So if you enjoyed this or liked it, please leave a like, favorite, and subscribe, and share this. If you'd like to hear more narrations like this, let me know in the comment section, and thanks for listening. Bye.